So this time last year, I got an email from one of the editors that I work with at AARP, the magazine, telling me that I, Halona Black, am an award-winning writer. And I got the email. I was like, oh, wow, cool. And I let it fall to the wayside. I told nobody, really. Well, I told my dad. Told my dad. I sent him a message via text. Uh, and I'm not really sure he understood what I was talking about. It wasn't that he, didn't care. He's just, he's not a writer, and so he didn't know what I was talking about really. Um, but I didn't do anything to celebrate the fact that I had won the Bronze Award from the Digital Health Awards um, for a personal essay. And um, one of the goals for last year was actually doing more personal essays. And here I was, I wrote a whole essay that, my editor thought was good enough to be entered into a contest. And I won a bronze award. Um, and I didn't think to tell anybody. Well, one, I didn't know that she put my essay in the contest. But for an editor of her caliber, because she's an awesome. She really is. She's an awesome editor. I always fully appreciated when I would write something and she would give me feedback on what it is that I was writing. And I don't think I've gotten that level of feedback from anybody that I have working with and working on magazines. And so the fact that she thought enough of my writing to be able to say, here, I put this in, I think it was maybe, I got the award maybe almost a year after I had gotten it, a year after the article was published almost. So I didn't know. I didn't tell anybody, but she had always said that she was always saying that my story was super powerful. If you're not familiar with me and who I am, my name is Halona Black. I left the United States in 2018. I'm an American, and I've lived in 10 countries since then. I use that time away to be able to do healing work. So I lost about 100 pounds. I worked on, healing myself from past relationships, and I built a writing career that I'm actually pretty proud of. And right now I'm working on trying to build the creative career that I have always wanted. And so I'm currently living in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I am looking to move to Guanajuato, Mexico, which is more of a university/art related town. And I think it suits me better than where it is that I live now at the beach. Um, so that's a little bit about my background. And so this particular digital health award, I started to think about why didn't I think enough to be able to stop and celebrate, especially since it was in line with the goals that I had set forth for myself. And I think one of the reasons is, I felt like, it's not that important. It's not a big award. It's not a big award. So the Digital Health Award is not like, it's not like a Pulitzer Prize or, any of the other large awards. People become New York Times bestseller lists, for authors, or an LA Times bestseller, USA Today bestseller, that sort of a thing. So because my award was not as big or as known as that perhaps my award was not worthy of sharing. And that's not true. That's not true. An award-winning writer is an award-winning writer. I have seen many writers call themselves award-winning, and they never even mention what the award was or where it came from, and it doesn't matter. They won the award. They are still an award-winning writer. Whether, we know, whether we're familiar with what the award is or not, it doesn't matter. Um, and so this sort of elitist mindset that I have been living with, and I actually want to be able to do the work to be able to get rid of it, causes writers, myself included, to self-sabotage our own success and really our own joy. I robbed myself of an opportunity to be joyful about the thing that I had won because I didn't believe that it was big enough. And I could go on. I can probably name a number of opportunities that I had earned, but because it wasn't as big as what everybody else was doing, that it wasn't important. Um, like for example, I have a handful of women friends who are, they're wonderful. They do wonderful work in spaces like corporate America. Um, have made millions of dollars in businesses, and I don't have that level of success because I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what it is that I want to do. Now, what's also funny is that a lot of these women who have, the so-called traditional success, they wish that they had spent at least some of their time doing the things that I had wanted to do. They spent a lot of their time chasing money, where I have always sort of chased my creative interests and learning things and trying things out. Um, And I do believe that I'm on a path to be able to get some of the traditional success that other people have had, including the monetary success. The monetary success is really what it is that I am referring to. And the monetary success also goes with people knowing who you are, which is why I'm doing this video series, this YouTube series, this daily blogging to be able to get my thoughts out into the world, and more people will get to know me, know my work, become interested in what it is that I'm saying, and perhaps even find a bit of themselves in what it is that I'm saying. And that's how we can create a connection here. Um, so, what does a win look like? So the essay that I wrote for AARP, let me pull it up. It's called Passport to Healing and Weight Loss After 40. It was actually published in Sisters from AARP, which is a popular um, I guess a sub magazine, if you want to call it that, of AARP, the magazine for women of African American descent. And basically, what I do here is I give an introduction to how it is that I started my healing process when I went to Thailand. And so I open up the story with saying I met this young lady named Amy. She's a young Thai woman who's a young farmer, and she had a young son. And I had ordered a couple of boxes of fresh fruit, some of the best fruits I've ever seen in my life. Thailand has excellent fruit. And I had gotten things um, like jackfruit and rose apples and um, what else, papayas and watermelon and all sorts of things, right? All sorts of things, just really beautiful fruit. And just what our interaction was, our initial interaction was in this new country that I was not familiar with, and how I was getting used to learning how to be able to choose eating this fresh fruit on a regular basis, as opposed to going for what I really wanted was like a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich from the corner store. Um, as I said in the beginning, I was once about 100 pounds overweight. And so I had a lot to be able to learn. And so being able to share this particular story and to be, offered an award with it was actually quite a big deal for me. And again, the editor that I worked with was really wonderful. She was really adamant about getting me to be um, specific about some of the sensory details of what it was like to be able to get the fruit, what the fruit smelled like, what it felt like, to be able to get fruit that still had the green leaves attached to it, and to be able to touch it. And, like the mangoes had, some of the nectar from the stem was starting to seep through, and just what that experience is like. Because for a lot of us in the States, we don't know what that feels like, what that experience is like. You don't necessarily need to go to Thailand for that. You can go to the Caribbean, of course, or even go to an international market. But a lot of us don't shop at the international markets, let's be honest. So we don't know what that actually feels like. A lot of the fruits and vegetables that we get in the States from a regular everyday grocery store, that stuff is so old. That stuff is so old that the stems have fallen off. The green leaves are now crunchy and yellow, if they're there at all. Um, it loses the flavor. They were picked um, too early, and so it never really develops the full flavor of what the fruit and the vegetable is supposed to actually taste like, because if they have to get it to travel a certain distance in trucks. Sometimes they freeze the stuff. Freezing things, in my opinion, ruins the flavor of a lot of fruits and vegetables. And um, so yeah, I wrote the article. I handed it in. She absolutely loved it, and of course, it seems like she put my particular article in to be considered for this particular award. And almost a year later, I found out that I won. But I didn't actually think about that particular award again until now, which is a year after the fact, a year after the editor had sent me the email saying that I had won. And I said, well, I was reading another writer's bio, and it said that she was an award-winning writer. And I was like, well, what do I need to do to be an award-winning writer? I would love to be able to say that. And then something in my head popped up, and I remembered, but wait a minute, what about that award from the editor that I used to work with at AARP? So I go back into my email to find it, and it literally says, um, congrats on your digital health award. Bronze, it says bronze award, passport to healing and weight loss after 40, sisters from AARP. And she sends me the paperwork where it says on page 7, it lists the award with the name of the article. And she says, congratulations. And I was like, oh, I am an award. I am an award-winning writer. And I didn't get it. It took me a whole year to be able to understand what that actually meant. Um, and so for a lot of us, we get caught up in the trap of, the more prestigious awards. So I started off saying, there's the Pulitzer Prize, the Booker Awards, the James Beard Awards, the Oscars, and things like that, the more prestigious awards. Thinking that those types of awards, while, all of those are important awards, but the smaller ones are too. And I think there's something in my brain that said, oh, these awards are just kind of made up. But if I think about it any further, they're all made up. Like all of these awards, like these are all awards. These awards exist because there was a group of people who got together and decided that a certain type of a person needed to be awarded. And it's usually to bring um, some sort of authority to a particular organization. But whatever. You win the award, you take it, and um, you use it for your personal gain because they're using your name and your story for their personal gain, right? So it doesn't really matter the fact that you think that it's a so-called it's a made up award. They're all made up. All of these awards are made up. Um, and so because we are sitting here trying to figure out um, when we hear that we get these awards, we often find ways to be able to sort of dumb down our own personal success. Um, and a lot of times, whoever was your harshest critic from childhood often pops up in your head. So that could be the teacher, um, the teacher that came in and used the red pen, if, as speaking as a writer. As a matter of fact, when I became a writing teacher for GED students, I made sure that I never showed up with a red pen. I never went through my students' work with a red pen and cross things out, circle things, give them a big X in the big in the corner. I always made sure to be able to talk to my students about their writing progress, just because for a lot of the students that I was working with, they had such nightmares and such blocks in their own brains about their ability or really their inability to write, which was that all of it was just made up. Because I could ask them about, if I would ask them a question to give them something to be able to think about, right? Um, and they could answer the question. It's not that their brains weren't working; they could answer the question just fine. Um, and it wasn't a matter of having a learning disability or anything. That it was just the matter of being able to take what they had in their heads, to take the pen and to be able to write it down. They didn't feel comfortable in doing that, and it's often because of they had experience in school that sort of traumatized them and kept them from being able to write. Um, and so for myself, I think I've kind of done the same thing to myself, into thinking that, well, if my award is not as prestigious as all these other writing awards, then it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter. And I, robbed myself of a whole year of being able to say to other people, to other outlets that I share my writing with, other places that I have entered my work in to be considered as, for a magazine article or for a program, other things that I have applied to. I skipped over the detail, which isn't fair to me. That's not fair to me. Um, and so I've never really, I guess I don't think that I've ever bought into the idea that being humble is better, but maybe I have. Maybe I have in a way. It's not about being humble. If you don't tell other people what your accomplishments are, then we're not giving them an opportunity to be able to appreciate me, to be able to see me. And then it's not even that uh, um, awards are the only thing that matter. Those, the physical awards. Um, there are many ways to be able uh, to measure one's success. You know, winning a new client is a great way to be able to measure your success. Um, Sometimes I write things and I'll get personal emails from people who have actually read my work. It's just, individuals who are just out, don't know me from Adam, but were somehow moved to be able to make a new decision, to think about something in a new way, who felt connected to what it is that I was saying and saw themselves in the work that I was putting out. Um, and they just said, thank you for writing that. that this thing that you said really touched my heart. I appreciate you saying that. And I had never heard anyone say this before. I feel seen. You know, the award doesn't always have to be an actual award. There are other ways to be able to measure your success. And so I think I just wanted to do this video today to be able to ask you as a writer, or just as a human in general, as a creative person, um, is to not disrespect your work. As we like to say, put some respect on your name, put some respect on my name. And it starts with you respecting your own work and your time, um, by deciding that what you've done is important, to stop minimizing the award. Um, Stop minimizing the award, and stop minimizing the audience who actually loved the work that I created, and the fact that they looked at my story, my personal story, my real life lived story, um, and thought it was enough to be able to celebrate, to look at me and say, wow, thank you for sharing your story. And, we learned our lessons from it, and we're going to carry the story with us. And to also to say thank you to the editor who actually helped me to write it. She was one of the first ones. Like, writing for her for AARP was actually one of the first places that I actually felt comfortable sharing my story, because she asked. I was minimizing my story. I think I tried to be able to share it in certain other spaces, and I didn't feel like they really got it, and so I just sort of kept it to myself. So, Sisters from AARP, I was actually doing an interview as a subject to be part of somebody else's article that somebody else was writing. Um, and the writer actually shared my story with this same editor, and the editor said, wow, she sounds like a writer, first of all. And so she asked for that writer to come back to me and said, do you write on a regular basis? And I said, yeah, well, yes, I do, but I write, B2B articles, business articles, not necessarily, essays about my life and my work. Not that I didn't know where to start with it, but I just didn't think it was important enough. I didn't think it was enough to be shared. I felt like I had to live more life in order for people to be interested, not really realizing that I've lived more life than a lot of people who are twice my age. Um, and it was worthy to be shared. And so, me minimizing my award, is, disrespectful to me, disrespectful to the editor who entered my work without me knowing, and disrespectful to my past self, the person who actually had to live this story in order for it to be written. So that was really what I wanted to share today. That was what I wanted to share today. Um, so what I have done as a result of this realization is that in all my bios, in all my online bios, I've gone ahead and said I am Halona Black and I am an award-winning writer. I'm an award-winning writer because I am. I don't have to hide that part. I'm going to put that in everything that I send out from now on. And I want you to be able to think about what is something that you are minimizing in your life. It could be an actual award, big, medium, or small. But it could be another type of a success, another type of success that you in your head are minimizing. It doesn't have to be celebrated amongst the masses for it to be important. It could be you, winning as a parent in some way, shape, or form. It could be you, you know, maybe you've got a group going on, somewhere in your community, and they're excited to meet every week or once a month or whatever it is, and they are meeting because you put the energy behind the group. Um, it could really be anything, but just to be able to stop and take a moment to be able to think about um, where it is that you're winning. Right now is such a difficult time for all of us. Because the economy is just jacked, and things always kind of feel like they're up in the air, and everybody's life feels like it's in a state of flux right now. It's not. It's everybody. In order, I think the way for all of us um, to be able to not just survive it, but to thrive through it, is to stop and take account of where it is that we're winning. I don't care how small it is. All right. So if you are new here, I have a Substack. It's called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. I would love for you to be able to click on the link in the description box or the comment box, and subscribe if you like this kind of talk. I like to talk to women who are creative, women who like to write. Um, I share these sorts of stories, and I also, for my paid subscribers, I share a weekly journaling prompt, a weekly, journaling community that we sort of have online, um, that you can have access to once you become a paid subscriber. It's called Wealthy, Wise, and Whole. You can, hit the subscribe button. And also, don't forget, I really would love for you. I'm on my way to getting to 1,000 subscribers. And so if you want to be um, alerted to when I put up a new video, and right now I'm doing a video daily, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so that you can tell the algorithm that you like videos like this. All right. So thank you so much for watching. Peace.